Hello friends, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, as you can probably tell from the title, I am doing my first ever monthly wrap-up video, except rather than doing it monthly, I'm thinking of doing it bi-monthly, at least until the summer, because I found out that I actually can't read that many books in a month individually. Things just come up and I have to do them first, and then I can't have as much time to read, or I don't like what I'm reading, and then I can't read it that fast. You know, all the things, you feel me? I don't know how some people read like 20 books, but like if you're at 20 books so far this year, A+ to you. But so far for me today, I have 7 books that I've read for 2019, and then I'm about 2/3 done another one, so that'll be an honorable mention at the end. And I'm essentially discussing these books in order of what I started first and what I just finished. So yeah, it's just your typical monthly wrap-up video. I actually am pretty happy with the books that I read overall, not only because I really liked some of them, but also because I didn't like some of them, and I'm trying to be more critical as a reader. So I found things that I didn't like in books and tried to explain them more. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on all these books, I'll put my Goodreads in the description. I have written reviews for almost all of them anyways, and so I'm really excited to talk about these books today. So without further ado, let's just jump in. First up on my list is the first in a trilogy, and it is The Thousandth Floor by Katharine McGee. I actually have a video about this book. I read this book in 24 hours for a 24-hour readathon. You can click the link over here in the cards if you're interested in checking it out. And this book basically is one of those books where there's 5 different perspectives, and then the different perspectives kind of all come together for one big event in the end, and you see how these stories are all intertwined and connected. And so I really liked that aspect of this book, and I thought it was really well done. I thought this book had a really good balance of good characters and good plot, and overall I really did enjoy it, and I'd be interested to see where the story goes in the next 2 books. But I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to read them, just because I think this book, while it was good, I don't think it's something that was super amazing, that would blow me away, and that I would want to take my time out to read the other books. As for my rating for this book, when I finished it, I thought it was a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so good. This is actually my second time reading this book. The first time I read this book, I thought it was like okay, hence I never read the other books after that, but this is the second time I was reading this book. As I said, once I finished it, I thought it was like super good. I thought the story was much better than before, and I just really loved it. I gave it 5 stars right off the bat. However, especially as I went on to my second and third book of the year, and also just was thinking about it more, I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars, and I've come to realize that, this is probably obvious for some of you, but I've come to realize that 3 out of 5 stars for me is a book that is solidly good. Like, I don't have bad things to say about it, but I also wouldn't be recommending it to everyone. So this book for me was a 3 out of 5 stars. If this concept sounds interesting to you, I would say go for it. It was overall pretty good. However, if it does not sound of interest to you, like, don't read it. Like, it was okay. The book itself was pretty good, but for me it wasn't that good. So, you know, would I recommend it? Not entirely, but if you want to read it, I also wouldn't stop you. So that is all for The Thousandth Floor by Katharine McGee. Next up on my list is my second read of the year, and it is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Now, this book essentially follows our main character. Her name's April May, and she discovers something with her friend, and she becomes an overnight internet sensation. And basically it follows her like trying to deal with becoming internet famous and how she feels about this, and also how her discovery is actually crazily like bizarre. It's something they've never seen before, and so I don't want to say too much without giving too much away. But I also really did enjoy this book, so I don't know if that was a really good description, but for me, I know that whenever I hear like, oh, someone's in a new environment and they don't know what to do, they're just figuring it all out, it doesn't like excite me for some reason. So I don't want to say that for this book. It's kind of what it is, but it's like better than that. Like, I don't know how to say it, but if you like internet culture, if you like weird sciencey things that are not really sciencey but like a little bit robots, like bruh, like try this book. Like, it's actually so good. And for Hank Green's debut novel, I thought it was absolutely amazing. And as for my rating for this book, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Same with the last book. After I finished reading it, I thought it was a 5 out of 5 stars, but then as time went on and I read other things, I realized that, hey, I read that and I thought this was better than this book, so they can't be the same reading if I thought that was better. So this book is a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. I'm not sure if this book is a standalone book or is going to be part of a duology or trilogy or whatever, because I've heard that it's not going to be. There's another book coming, but so far this is the only book out in the series, and I thought overall it was really good and kind of sad, low-key, but overall really good. I would recommend it. Hank Green did a great job on this book, and so a solid 4 out of 5 stars for me. I would recommend it. If you have read it, I hope you enjoyed it as well, and if you have not, I would recommend it. It was really good. Thank you, Hank Green. For the third book I read this year, it is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. As you can tell, this is my first book I've ever really fully annotated, so I was really enjoying reading this book more in depth, trying to pick out things within characters, plots, settings, romance, problematic things, and I was overall really happy with this book, especially after I was trying to read more in depth into it. I found like literally barely any problems with this book. I thought the story was good. I thought the characters were good. This book was so good. Like, immediately after I finished reading this book, I was like, I have to go get the second one. And I did a few days later. I haven't read it yet because I've been reading other things, but I can't wait to see where this story goes, and I definitely want to do a book review on this. I'm thinking I'll do a trilogy review rather than just an individual book review because I want to start doing more series reviews, and so I definitely thought this book was an amazing read. The world was so good. I'll tell you what it's about now, but it's basically, we follow our main protagonist, Cal, and he is an Antari, and basically that means he can travel between different worlds. And as we know, there are 4 different worlds. There's Grey London, Red London, White London, and Black London. And the story essentially, as you just heard, centers around London. And in each of these different worlds, they're all super crazy in terms of geography and rules and magic, most importantly of all, but they all seem to have a focal point, which is around London. And so Cal can travel between the different worlds, and he also is a smuggler. He doesn't necessarily smuggle like anything bad, but it's just like trinkets from other worlds, or he'll like bring things from London to another London for people that want to collect items and that kind of thing. That's technically really illegal, and so he keeps doing this, and it ends up getting him into trouble. And that's all I'm gonna say. We actually get another protagonist in this book as well later on in the story named Lila, and she's amazing, and so they kind of work together and have to fix this mistake. And just, this book was so good. Like, there's so many things I could say about this book. And so, in case you can't already tell from me saying how good this book was, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, and this book still right now 100% deserves this rating. I'm really excited to see where the next book goes in the series because this book was kind of closed off really nicely, so I'm interested to see where it could go because I actually don't know. Like, that's my favorite part in a book or a series, when you have no idea what's going to happen next. And so I have no idea what's going to happen next, and so V.E. Schwab really outdid herself in this book, and so I'm quite excited just to see what happens. So if this book sounds of any interest, I would highly recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars from me. Nothing more I can really say about this in terms of how great it is, but it was great. You should read it. I would recommend. It is an adult fantasy book, and so it's kind of a lot like YA though. Like, I didn't see a huge difference, and so if you are transferring in from YA to adult fiction, this is definitely the book for you. Also, an absolutely remarkable thing as well. Those 2 books, great transition books, I guess, or they're just really good in general. Who knows? But anyways, enough from me on this book. This is great. You should read it. Next up on my list is my 4th read of the year, and it is The School for Good and Evil. I actually annotated this book as well. And this is a book that I'm really glad that I read, not only because it's the School for Good and Evil series, one of my all-time favorite series, or it has been when I read it. I've read it many times, but this is the first time that I read it as like a critical reader rather than someone just looking to enjoy a story, if you know what I mean. This book, I'm actually really happy that I read because I did not like it. And so now that I did not like this book, I can compare it to other books and be like, is this book better or worse than this book? So let me explain. This series, when I first read it, I thought it was absolutely amazing. It's been on my favorite series shelf for ever. Like, it's been one of my favorites, and so I wanted to reread it because the 5th book is coming out in 2 days actually when you're watching this, and so I've been rereading the series. And so this book essentially follows 2 best friends, Agatha and Sophie. Sophie really likes pink and doing good deeds and that kind of thing, and Agatha lives alone with her mother in a graveyard, wears black, and hates people in general. So they are just unlikely friends, and they live in this small town, and for the last 200 years, every 4 years, 2 kids, one seemingly good and one seemingly evil, get kidnapped by the schoolmaster to attend the school for good and evil. And so our 2 protagonists, Sophie and Agatha, get taken, and who knows what's actually going to happen when they get to the School for Good and Evil and all that kind of stuff. And so the premise of this book sounds really good. I loved it. I thought still in this book that the plot was pretty good, other than problematic things. And so I actually have a full review on this book. You can click over here to go watch it. And basically, the first half of this book, I really did not like. I thought it was so problematic. There were so many stereotypes used, and since this book is meant for a 9 to 12 audience, as it is a middle grade book, I did not like how many stereotypes there were and how they were used, and so that was essentially the main reason why this book was brought down to a low rating for me. And so as for my rating for this book, I'm pretty confident in when I say this. I gave this book a 2.5 stars because I enjoyed the concept of it, but I thought some of the execution wasn't that great. I also thought halfway through the book and onwards was much better than the first half of the book. As I was reading the first half of the book, I was thinking maybe a 2-star rating. Then as I read the second half of the book, I was thinking more of a 3 stars, and then that was my rating for it for a while. But I think I'm more comfortable with a 2.5 stars due to all the problematic things in this book. And also going back to how I read The Thousandth Floor, I definitely thought this book wasn't as good in terms of problematic things in that book, so hence a 2.5 stars seemed pretty fitting for me for this book. Would I recommend this book? I kind of want to say yes, because as I'm going to talk about these books and the rest of the books in the series in this video, like, this book has its flaws, and I just want to say maybe it's because of the time it was written in. Even though it was written in like 2012, 2013, I do think if it was rewritten, it could be rewritten a little bit differently with the use of less stereotypes, just to make it more like kid-friendly. However, the rest of the series, I have to say, got much better. I just kind of think that it's the author that has gotten better in his writing and story development and all that kind of stuff, so this book overall wasn't the greatest, but I'm going to talk about the rest of the books in the series that might just make this book worth reading. So next up, as you can probably guess, I read The School for Good and Evil, A World Without Princes. This is the second book in the series, and I also have a full review on this book, so if you want to check it out, I'll link it in the cards. I don't really want to give too much away about what it's about because it's the second book in a series, and I know if I talk about what this book is about, it's definitely going to spoil some things from the last book. So if you enjoy the concept of the story that I just mentioned, basically how there's a school for good and evil where you can get your own fairy tale by going there, that's why the students learn good traits or evil traits. Like, if that just concept sounds really good for you, I would say read this series. Like, the first book, if you push through it, it's not that bad. It's pretty good. So, like, this book was much better, I found, than the last book. As for my rating for this book, I gave it a 3.5 stars. Again, I was thinking it was more like the 4-star range, but then I read the next book in the series and I was like, no, this one, it's gonna be 3.5. The reason I give it a 3.5 and not a 4-star is because there was also problematic things in this book, just less so. Like, in that first book, it was like a huge part of the story, and that makes sense because fairy tales do involve stereotypes and that kind of thing. However, I found that it was just an over usage of it, so this book still had some, and it also had a pretty negative perception of boys in this book, which I did not like. And so hence, instead of giving it a 4 stars, I gave it a 3.5 because I definitely thought it was better than the last book, but there are still things in this book that I thought could be improved on. And so I don't want to say too much more than that because spoilers. If you enjoy the concept of this book, I definitely would recommend trying this series because even though the first book was a lot of it problematic, the overall story was pretty good and just gets better as the series goes on. We interrupt this series review now on The School for Good and Evils for a little book that I read in the middle of the series, and that is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is a classic book that I had to read for English, and so it basically follows our two protagonists, George and Lenny, and they go on a farm to work, and yeah, that's the plot of the book. Like, on the back of this book, I really don't know how they described it because there's literally like not that much. Like, they have this dream they want to achieve together, and it's basically to own this piece of land where they can live off what they do, they don't have to answer to nobody, and it's just like that kind of thing. And to be honest, I know we talked about this in class, but I don't really remember when this book takes place. I just know it's not any time recently. I did not like this book, and as I was reading it, I can see how some of the things that the author does makes this book a good read and also deals with some topics that still make this book relevant today. However, for someone that just wants to enjoy a book and wants to get wrapped in a world or into characters' lives, I thought this book was pretty bad. As I said, the foreshadowing in this book, the literary devices used in this book, that kind of thing in the book, I thought it was good. The topics it dealt with, you can still reference them today as I'm learning in class, but as for the story, I thought it wasn't that good, and also just like, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, I don't know what it is. I've tried to read classic books before. This one's like just over 100 pages, and it's like one of the smaller books, you know, it's not even like a bigger book, but it wasn't that good. I wouldn't recommend it that much. Like, yeah, I kind of don't know how to rate this book, but if I were to rate it, I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, and that's the worst book I read this year, 2 out of 5 stars, because I can appreciate some of the things the author did. However, in terms of enjoyment, I did not enjoy this book. Maybe it's just the fact that I read it for school, but I don't know if it is, because I just don't think classics are that much for me. I'm still going to try to give them a try because I think that they're just something you need to read because they're called classics, but it's not that good. And so this was kind of a disappointment because I wanted to enjoy it and analyze it and stuff, and so I kind of did for this thing we had to do for an assignment. I don't know if you can see these sticky notes, but yeah, don't really have that much more to say about this. It was kind of trash. Wouldn't really recommend. Now we get to go on to another book, and this is actually does barely fits in my hand. This is the last book in the main trilogy for The School for Good and Evil. There's a second trilogy, it's called The Camelot Years, and there's gonna be 3 books in that, so this is the last book in the main trilogy. And I love this book. This is definitely the best out of the 3 for me in the main trilogy, so if you like the concept and want to push through to the end, I would recommend it because this book was so good. I'm gonna double check my review on this book, make sure. Okay, so I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really good. It might even deserve a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It wouldn't be a 5 out of 5 stars just because I don't think it's something I would necessarily be rereading just for the sake of rereading it. This book was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really loved it. I'm not gonna say what it's about because, you know, spoilers, but again, Sophie and Agatha, they're still on the cover, still a main thing in the story. I loved this book. I really enjoyed reading it. It was definitely way better than the other books. And like, I really enjoyed how the author's writing just got better and better like throughout the series. I was like, yes, this is the right writing development we needed. And so overall this book was really good. I'm really happy with it and I just really liked it. So thank you for making these books better. And overall, I still think the series is pretty good. Just the fact that the first book kind of threw me off because if you're starting a series and you don't like the first book, what are the chances that you're going to continue on with it? So I wish the first book just had less like problematic things because then I would fully recommend this series. So now I kind of don't know if I would recommend this series, but I definitely know that the second book was really good and this third book was amazing. So A+ on the series, or at least on this book. So really happy with this read and yeah. So those are my 7 books that I read in the last 2 months. However, I do have one honorable mention, and that is the book I'm reading right now. And if you can't guess from the other books that I've already mentioned, it is the 4th book in the School for Good and Evil series. It is the first in the Camelot Years trilogy, but they're like really connected, so like it's not super different. It's more of just one long big series. It's called The Quest for Glory and it is technically the 4th book in the series. The 5th book comes out 2 days from today. I've been really enjoying this book so far. I'm about 2/3 of the way done it. I'm hoping to finish it today and then get out a review sometime before the 5th book comes out. So you'll probably be expecting a video on this book from me on Monday or Tuesday of this week. As for what I can say about this book right now, I don't really want to give too much away because, you know, spoilers. If you just like the series, just maybe give it a try. It might be worth it, it might not be, who knows. Also, if you're not that critical of a reader, you might not see those things or you might just like skip over them. Who knows, but anyway, this book so far is really good. If I were to rate it right now, I'm thinking I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars, but I'm not 100% sure yet because there was one thing I noticed that I wasn't necessarily fond of. Now, and it's not anything bad, just something within a character that I was like, this is kind of like boring. And I don't want to say anything just in case, but overall I thought this book was pretty good and I know how to rate it, but I'm not 100% sure. But I'm really enjoying this book so far. I'm almost done it, so I'm gonna hopefully finish it today or in the next day or 2. And so overall, I'm enjoying it. This series is definitely just getting really, really good now. I just think that first book kind of threw me off for the whole series. And so, which is kind of unfortunate because I do want to recommend it, but I don't want to be like, yeah, the first book sucks, but the rest is good. Because like, that's not fun to read a book that you're just reading for the sake of getting through it. So that's not fun. And we don't like that. But overall, the series has gotten way better and I do really like that. So I'm really excited for the 5th book and I cannot wait to read it. So yeah, that is all the books that I read in the months of January and February. Overall, had a good mix of books I liked and books I did not like. And so I'm really happy to figure out more of the kinds of books that I do like and also figuring out why I like some books and also why I don't like other books. So if you're interested in any of my written reviews, I have written reviews on almost all of these books. As I said, my Goodreads is down below in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and comment down below if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, if you liked them, if you didn't. Let me know your thoughts. As I already said, I will be having a book talk or a book review on The Quest for Glory, the 4th book of the School for Good and Evil series, within the next day or two, so look out for that if you're interested, and I will see you then with a new video. So until then, bye.